Alright everyone, it's time for a much more funny video. Of course, we had to cover the unfortunate killing of an 18-year-old by a liberal before he gets out on bail today. Legacy media not covering the Shannon Brandt case quite so much as it should. I wonder why. But now we've got something amusing. Link in the description, archived of course. Slate put out probably the biggest Cope article so far this particular election cycle. There's always a few that stand out. You had this in 2016, 2018, 2020. Articles for which, they're coping because someone that they really wanted to win clearly wasn't going to win. This, though, takes the cake so far. And it's not even a Vox article. They're usually the biggest whiners in the room. Vox and Salon. This time it comes from Slate. And they're talking about Stacey Abrams. Now, if you look at the polling for the Georgia gubernatorial race, and Abrams is the one that ran before and lost already, that was a really, really close race. That was a squeaker for Kemp, who's the incumbent. Stacey Abrams is roughly 6 points behind now in the aggregate. So far, there's not been one single poll that involves her being ahead. The closest she's come is like within a couple of points. If you have any polling skew at all, and it's usually in favor of the GOP when all is said and done during the midterms, she can't win. The votes simply aren't there. Even with higher turnout, she wouldn't be able to clinch it. I think that she will. I think now we've got a third race to look at as far as who will win by the biggest margin. Which one of the three GOP incumbents the Democrats are really, really mad at right now will win by the biggest margin? You've got Greg Abbott in Texas. Of course, Beto's running against him. DeSantis in Florida. He's facing off against Charlie Crist. And then Kemp in Georgia facing off against Stacey Abrams. I think that Kemp might actually have the biggest gap when all is said and done. It looks like the polling is actually inching its way in his direction. By the way, deviating from the restoration of Biden's approval for reasons that I alluded to earlier and will speak about at great length during today's live stream if I get time to do so. The fact is that Biden's restoration and approval is all Democrats anyway. These were disaffected leftoid Democrats that were angry at him and got off the Biden short bus because he wasn't doing what they wanted him to do. Then he mentioned he got that Manchin Schumer deal with regards to his green energy bullshit. That certainly helped. And then the the student loan debt forgiveness sham, which may or may not even end up happening, but we won't know that till after the midterms. It's very, very coincidental, by the way, that that's going to happen. They're hoping to throw a nuke at the Republicans by trying to do it in the legislative sense to get them on record as opposing it, even though a significant plurality of U.S. voters also oppose it. I don't know exactly what they're doing with that one. I think that they might end up snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. The Democrats might get to do that for a change. With Stacey Abrams, structurally, at this point, unless there's a major scandal or something, she can't win. She probably knows this as well. She's not exactly the most forefront campaigner at the moment. That's probably for a reason. And she's a big-mouthed blowhard, so you'd think that she'd be out there every day constantly whining and ranting and putting forth her platform. There's one of the problems. Can anyone tell me what Stacey Abrams' platform actually is? No, you can't. It's just all about racial equity and gender equality and gimme free shit. That's not really a platform. It's just a bunch of idpol horse crap, and most of it's just generic Dem ink anyway. Therefore, you get this article. The epic cope of saying, well, Stacey Abrams isn't just a gubernatorial candidate. This isn't the only thing that Stacey Abrams is doing, everyone. Don't worry, Stacey Abrams stands. People simping for her. Don't worry. Yeah, we know that she's going to lose. We won't actually say that in the article, but that's the fucking insinuation. We know that she's going to lose her political ambitions here. She's not going to be elected governor, and she will lose probably fairly soundly to Kemp, who supposedly doesn't have high approval and represents the extremist party of goofballs while Georgia moves steadily blue. We don't see that happening here. Again, I love analyzing polls as we get closer to the midterms. But she does so many other things. She's emerged as one of the foremost activists for racial equity. She's a prolific writer. She's always out there doing the activism thing. Here she is. Here's a picture of her with BLM. There's a picture of her having tea with the leader of Antifa and, shit like that. It's a fluff piece. But it's the biggest cope piece also that I've seen. you're not even in October. There is potentially, if there's going to be any closeness in the race, you could make up that polling difference in the coming 6 weeks. It's not impossible. There have been late swings, by the way, towards or against candidates since time immemorial. The polling can also be wrong. You could look at it and say, well, Stacey Abrams is 6 points behind, but we think that the skew will actually favor the Dems this time. So she's only like 3 points behind. Let's go knock on more doors. All we need is a little more turnout, just a few tens of thousands of voters. That's all we need. You could have an article like that. Fight for Stacey Abrams, first African-American governor in Georgia, leader for equity, leader for equality. They're giving all of this hyperbolic praise to her, but they're not lifting a finger to help her get elected. They're making a preemptive excuse 6 weeks before the midterms for why she will lose. They know that she's going to lose. Nobody looking at the polling numbers there would speculate that Stacey Abrams will win. I still see the leftoid craptivists, though, not only supporting her, but predicting her victory. Well, in only a few short weeks, Brian Kemp will be kicked aside like the pathetic MAGA trash he is by a proud, empowered lady who don't need no man, Stacey Abrams. You know, hail feminism and BLM and stuff. Hail critical race theory. But really, I think most of them are just clout chasing. I think that they understand. If they know anything about polling whatsoever, they're not confident of victory. Or they're making a mistake. They're doing what the normies do, and they're looking at the cherry-picked polls that are put out by MSNBC or something and saying, well, yeah, Stacey Abrams is within striking distance. She's only 2 points behind Brian Kemp. I see them making this same mistake, by the way, with DeSantis and Christ, with Abbott and Beto O'Rourke. And with others, actually. You got a bunch of races have narrowed into the GOP's favor. It seems like they are 3-1 gaining in races, or at least maintaining a small advantage in races that are actually reasonably close. If this is going to trickle down to the other toss-up races for which we don't have that much polling, the Republicans will sweep it even if they lose a couple of more powerful incumbent positions. Not going to be close. Herschel Walker versus Warnock is now sort of the mean, median, and mode race to watch, where it's just about 50-50, and based on that, I think Warnock has a lead of 0.2 right now against Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker's not even a strong candidate, dude. He self-admittedly is not the greatest debater or speaker, and Warnock has the incumbency. And you can't get ahead of 50-50 with him? Where does that leave Stacey Abrams in the same state? What this shows me is that there is still a considerable advantage within registration, etc. for the GOP, and this is something that isn't talked about enough. They have more registered voters now. They appear to have at least slightly higher enthusiasm, and we could end up getting a polling skew. If there is a polling skew, I mean, there will be one. It's just, what direction is it in? How big is it? It is probably going to be to the GOP's advantage after all of the votes are actually tallied. Traditionally, in U.S. midterms, this is the case. It is generally in their favor. It could be 0.1. It could be 7 points. We have no way preemptively of knowing. In fact, with regards to statistical analysis, I hate to tell you this, hindsight isn't 20/20. The polling firms keep doing the same thing over and over again. There's always a skew. It's just a matter of how close they got to the mark. The deviation from reality, if anything, seems to be getting worse slowly over time. It's probably because these firms play politics in order to try to convince people to vote one way or the other. Stacey Abrams will lose. That's point number one. It's basically a done deal. Again, unless you get some massive October surprise. It'll probably be by 4 to 5 points. It could be high. I would give it greater odds of being higher than that than lower. So that's a crushing defeat since she came within a point the last time around. This shows movement against her and against the Dems. And it's indicative, it's a bellwether of polling shifts in other races too. Mehmet Oz is now fundamentally capable of winning, just to be clear. Herschel Walker is now fundamentally capable of winning. Val Deming's advantage has disappeared against, it was Evers, I believe. Over and over again, it's the same story when we look in polling. The Democrats, supposedly, they're gaining on the generic, and Biden's recovered his popularity to 43, and everything's hunky-dory. Look at us, oh, blue wave. Why isn't it affecting these other races? It's because of that leftoid core that was always going to support you to begin with. It is literally a blue mirage. That's about all. Peace out.